Okay, there we go. Bringing them all in. Konnichiwa. No, it's Ohayo gozaimasu still. So, Ohayo gozaimasu. It's Japanese. Ohayo gozaimasu. Okay, there we are. There we are. All right. Wiggle, wiggle. There you go. Good morning. Hey, look at this. Oh, all of our polyglots. Annyeong haseyo. There you go. All right. And how do you say it in Polish? Dzień dobry. Okay. There we go. This is going in a different direction than what I thought. That was the whole message. So this year we are at Centers for Spiritual Living. We're working with the theme of spirituality in action, and this month's theme, the theme for the month of May, is care for the poor and compassion. And the talk title for today that was shared with us by Home Office was "Who are the poor?" It's a good question. And you should have seen the minister's listserv blow up. Woo! Right? Because when we say the word poor, sometimes that incites all of our shame. Right? No, what is poor? No, I don't believe in poor. No, I don't want to think about poor. No, I don't want to think about poverty. No, I can't, focus on that. What if I focus on that? I might draw it into my life. Right? So there were several beloveds who were like, nope, saw the theme, not working with it, not looking at it, totally denying it, gonna change the theme for the month because that does not work for me, blah, 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 blah. Right? And then there are those of us who are like, ooh. You can guess which camp I'm in, right? There's the title. So it's a yes and. It's a both and. It's not an either or, it's a both and. Okay? So when we look at the word poor, and especially when we look at it in the context that we are using it for this year's theme, which is based on the 10 prophetic justice principles, which you'll find in the back of your Connect magazine. When you look at that, then the question is, and so the prophetic justice principles themselves are to help us think about and help us align with when we are creating policies, when we're creating procedures, when we are interacting out into the world, when we are moving about. Are we keeping these things in mind? And so the question then was care for the poor. And when we look at then our policies and procedures, our rules, our regulations, our systems, etc., when we are looking to affect change and we're looking to move out into the world, are our solutions, are our policies, are our ideas being inclusive of those who are financially, that may have financial insecurity? That's what it's asking from that perspective. And so my critique here of some of my beloved colleagues, is when we're not willing to look at, when we get so caught up in our idea of poor and we have to think rich instead, we have to change our language, we have to change our thinking to counteract the poorness. What are we really doing? What are we really saying? What are we doing when we encounter a beloved or a beloved family like the one in the picture? How are we able to show compassion if we're not willing to see their circumstance? How can we open our hearts and be available to these beloveds if we're not willing to see them? We have a tendency to get caught in our labels and how we look at labels. But labels are just labels. They're ways of things. They're ways of understanding things. They're words. And if we look at them, then we have the opportunity to understand perhaps something greater. We have the opportunity to understand an idea. But first we have to name it. In order to be able to talk about anything, there has to be some kind of a label. There has to be some kind of word. There has to be some kind of name. Otherwise, we're just kind of like, well, what is there to talk about, right? How can we exchange ideas? How can we exchange thoughts? How can we understand one another in a greater way? How can we understand ourselves in a greater way without the use of language, without the use of words? Words are another way of saying labels, right, for things. And so if we are refusing to use the word poor, then are we also not discounting, dismissing, disrespecting 75% of the Earth's population? Because we're refusing to look at it, we're refusing to use the word, but it's the way we can use the word too, right? We have to be mindful of how we're using our words. So if we're using the word like, oh, look at those poor people over there starving, oh. From that place of pity, from that place of I'm better than them, from that place of, oh, let me go rescue, or that place of like, oh, there, but for the grace of God go I, right? Then we're not coming from a pure intent. However, if we are looking at it from, let me understand what this means, let me understand these beloveds, let me understand what is their life experiences, let me interact with these people, let me interact with these beloveds, recognizing that I am one with them and they are one with me, and there is no place where I stop and they begin. That their experience is a shared experience of all of humanity. If I approach it from that place, then really what does the label mean? It's just a greater opportunity to understand another's experience that might be different from my own. And then there were some beloveds in my beloved colleagues who were like, well, if you label them the poor, then that's separation. And we're really, really one. But it's separation. If we label them poor, then we're affirming that for them, or we're separating ourselves from them and creating an us versus them. But once again, I ask, if you're refusing to see who they are, if you're refusing to see their plight, if you're refusing to see their lived experience, how then can you relate to them? How then can we be inclusive? So by refusing to use the term, then aren't we also being exclusive? Aren't we also separating ourselves? We're putting distance between us and these beloveds. And this applies to any label, really. Right? Male, female, gender fluid, black, white, Asian, gay, straight, blonde, brown, blue, brown. These are simply distinctions, and they're simply ways of discussing a concept, and ways of understanding ideas, and ways of understanding difference, and ways of understanding diversity, and ways of understanding something. But it's what we do with it. If we're using it to separate ourselves in greater ways, if we're using it to discount, or we're using it to push down, we're using it to oppress, we're using it to otherize rather than celebrate, then that's where we run into difficulty. So here in our faith and our philosophy, what we teach here at Centers for Spiritual Living is that there is an infinite source and supply, yes? There's an infinite abundance, yes? And that we are always one with this, yes? Then how does poverty happen? And the way that's typically answered is, if I just change my thinking, then I change my circumstances, I change my conditions. And that's true, right? If we change our thinking, we change our thoughts, we realize that actually there is an infinite abundance, there is an infinite universe, and we turn away from the condition itself, the condition that we're experiencing, we turn away from that condition, and we turn toward that which we wish to experience or that which we wish to live out. We turn away from this, and so we're basically putting this over here, and then we're turning toward this, and we're moving in this direction. Yes? That's the way that works? Yes? You sure? Okay. Then we're moving in this direction by doing a series of affirmations, of positive affirmations, of affirming what it is that we want to see in our life. We're building what we call a mental equivalent. We're building that which we wish to experience. So if we wish to experience prosperity, we wish to experience abundance, then where we focus our attention, as we focus our intention and attention on that which is prosperous, on that which is abundant. Yes? That's basically the way it works. Is that correct? And what is your lived experience? Because sometimes what that does is, yes, it works. It works for a while until it doesn't work anymore. And why doesn't it work anymore? Why, Sean? Because we're not working it, right? That's one reason, exactly, because we're not working it, right? We're like, we get lazy, right? Okay, and so we stop working it. One of the other reasons why, and we talked about this in class, in our treatment meditation class on Thursday night, one of the reasons why prayer doesn't work or prayer ceases to work is because what we've done is we've rearranged our good. We have rearranged the furniture. We have improved this conditional life because we have focused on conditions and we have focused on that, and that's perfectly fine, right? But prayer doesn't always work necessarily, eventually, because what happened is that, yes, we have temporarily shifted our perspective, we've temporarily shifted our condition. But have we really shifted our belief? Have we really shifted our consciousness? Because while it looks like we've gone from here of, no, I don't have enough, so if I don't have enough, then the remedy for not having enough is getting more stuff and getting more and getting more and getting more and focusing on the positive. And then it feels like we've slid back. Because what's happened here is that we have forgotten, perhaps, because we didn't necessarily realize that what was operating underneath all of this was a sense of not enoughness, was a belief in, I don't have enough, was a belief in, I'm not worthy, was a belief in, the universe is actually against me and not for me. That belief is operating underneath the surface. It's operating in the subconscious or the collective unconscious. It's operating there, and that is something that we actually believe. And what does the universe respond to? Your belief. It responds to the belief. So even that which has been given will be taken away, right? So the opportunity then is to go deeper and to look at what it is that we truly believe. Not just a happy little affirmation, right? God is good all the time. Yes. Right? I live in an abundant universe. Yes. But do you believe it? Do you know it to the core of your being? Is that where you're operating from? Seek first the kingdom of God, and all things are added unto you is the other way of looking at it. It's another way, or it's another approach to looking at life. I shared in class, if God is omniscient, God is all-knowing, the divine is all-knowing, how do you think then that God doesn't know what you already have need of? What do you think you can tell the all-knowing, omniscient, all-powerful that the omniscient, all-knowing doesn't already know? Right? Think about that. What am I going to say if I'm dealing with an all-knowing entity? I'm dealing with an all-knowing power, and that resides within me. I'm dealing with the all-known, or the all-knowing. What is little self, small self, little J, Jeffrey, going to say, or think, or feel, or know that Spirit with a capital S doesn't already know? Well, so then what's the opportunity? The opportunity is to affirm. The opportunity then is to approach everything from another perspective, which is called the transformational perspective, to approach everything from the transformational, or to approach life from a transformational perspective of shifting the consciousness, of allowing that which no longer serves, to simply fall back into the nothingness from which it came, and to focus our attention and our intention on the truth of who we are, on aligning with the truth of who we are, which is we are the divine. That it's God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, and it was already given. So we simply align with that and allow. Align with truth. Empty ourselves of our small self and align with that which already is. Align with the capital self, the capital S self, the true self, which is inherent in each one of us. Making sense? You sure? Right. But this is a deeper way of thinking. This is a more mystical way of thinking, a more mystical approach to life. Yes, and so it's not an either or necessarily, it is a both and. That there is certainly a time and a place for this, what's called a translational spirituality. The translational spirituality is translating bad into good, right? And that's what we do with affirmations, etc., when we are turning away from that which we no longer wish to experience and turn toward that which we wish to experience. That's a translational spirituality. That's a translational idea of translating this from this into this. And it is working completely in the realm, if you will, of condition. It's about changing conditions. Where a transformational spirituality, which is also part of our philosophy and our ideas, and sometimes they feel like they're conflicting and they're competing, but the transformational idea is to realize who you are, realize the truth of nature, realize the truth of life, and align with that. And it's not about trying to change condition. Conditions change as a secondary feature or as a byproduct of realizing the truth of your being and realizing the truth of your life. Realizing the truth that you are abundance, that it's already been given, that you live in an infinite intelligence, you live in an infinite world, you live with deep prosperity and deep divine abundance. You're living an abundant life already, if you would just get out of the way. Just get out of your own way. Yes? So, there is the Beatitude, and if you were here for this morning's meditation that my beautiful husband Ed did for us this morning, it was fantastic, so thank you. It was great to have him be able to lead meditation here for the first time in this sanctuary space. So I invite you to make sure to check out meditation every morning at 10 a.m. on Sundays. But if you're here for that, he looked at the Beatitudes. Right? Specifically the beatitude of poor in spirit. The poor in spirit the kingdom is already theirs. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit. The kingdom is already theirs. The kingdom of heaven is already theirs. So what does this poor in spirit mean? So I looked at that, and I went online as well. And there was some interesting takes on what is poor in spirit. The first take that I saw was that, I was reading it, it was a children's message, because, that's a great, children's message. Are awesome because they break it down they really break it down, right? So I'm reading this children's message about the Beatitudes and blessed are the poor in spirit and what is the poor in spirit. And I'm reading along and like, okay, I'm tracking. And then it's like the teacher goes, and here's something that nobody will tell you. I'm like, ooh. You are a sinner. You were born in original sin. There is nothing you can do to earn God's love. There is nothing you can do. You are, and that is poor in spirit because you're so poor in spirit that you are such a lonely, miserable person that you are born in sin. Can you imagine telling this to a 6-year-old? That you are and it's because of God's grace and God's love that you will enter heaven. I can't imagine saying that to you and meaning it, let alone telling that to a child, right? So we know that we're not born of original sin, correct? We're born of original love, right? And all of life is born of original love. There is only one power, one presence, one life, one love. And everything, all of creation, is the divine manifestation and impartation of this one life. There was nothing else in the beginning except God, except love, so that everything and everyone, all of creation, has to be born of that same thing. There's nothing else for it to be created from other than love. So, when I was reading this poor in spirit, that it's all oh my gosh, what a thing to say. What a way to live. And to me, that was wow, now that is poor. That is just poor, right? And then when I was discussing with some of my colleagues about what is poor in spirit, they're like, and I was thinking about this too, it's poor in spirit means that you are separate from God, that somehow you have separated yourself from the divine, that you've forgotten the who of who you truly are, that you have managed to separate, or not even necessarily intentionally, but you are feeling separate from God, that God is out there somewhere doing something out there, and it is a separate entity altogether, that it is not one with, you are not one with it, that you have to bow down to it, that or that there is no divine at all, right? That complete separation, that there just simply is no higher power, there is no self, there is no spirit, there is nothing. That we experience a complete sense of separation from the who of who we are. And so poor in spirit could mean that, right? Because it really is impossible to sign into law a ban against women and the agency of their own body, if you are one with the one. If you are living in alignment, if you are not experiencing a sense of separation of us versus them, if you have totally forgotten who you are, then that is possible. But if you remember who you are, then you have to remember that women are divine beings too, that each woman is the divine made manifest. And each woman has agency of her own body as well. So for those beloveds in Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, and the others that are experiencing this degree of separation that allows them to act from a place of fear, we have compassion. We are called to have compassion. Forgive them, for they know not what they do, but forgive them, for they know not who they are. They've forgotten. And so some of my colleagues were talking about that is poor in spirit. But then if that's poor in spirit, then how does that group live in the kingdom of heaven right now? How is that possible? Not really, right? If we're living in a degree of separation, if we know that heaven is here and now, right here and right now, and we're living in this degree of separation, and we're perpetuating the degree of separation, then are we really living in heaven? Heaven is within us. Heaven is a state of consciousness. Heaven is a state of oneness. Heaven is a state of alignment. That's what we teach here, yes? So then I was looking further, and I looked at Charles Fillmore, and I looked at the same article that Ed found by Father Richard Rohr, who is a Catholic. I would say he's a Catholic modern-day mystic, Richard Rohr. And he looked at the poor in spirit in the same way that Charles Fillmore looked at it, is that it is poor in spirit, meaning poor in the small self, that we allow the small self, we turn within and we allow the small self, we're self-reflective, and we allow the small self to kind of disappear. And as we allow the small self, as we allow our desires, our ideas, our reputations, our need to protect our egocentric self, as we allow that need to protect that falls away, and then that creates an open vessel through which spirit can move, live, and have its being, and be brought forth into life in a greater expression. Make sense? So it is about that self-emptying and spirit filling, because the universe abhors a vacuum. And Ed mentioned a Zen story of the young Buddhist monk who came to a master and was saying, you know, this is all the spiritual teaching I've learned. These are all my teachers. This is what I've learned. This is how much I've grown. And this is everything about me. And he just kept going on and on and on and on and on, right? And the Buddhist master is choosing to pour tea at the same time. And he's pouring tea, and he's pouring tea, and he's pouring tea, and he's pouring tea, and now the teacup is overflowing, and the student is extolling his virtues and everything, and the Buddhist master is continuing to pour tea until it's overflowing all over the table. And finally, the student goes, "Master, you're pouring tea. It's going all over the table. The teacup is full." And he goes, "And so are you. And that's why I can't teach you." Right? That we have to be empty in order to be filled. Right? So empty of self in order to be filled. So we have this opportunity in our movement and in our lives to, yes, work with the translational. Work with moving from one condition that's not desirable to another condition that perhaps is desirable. But what I invite you to also think about is that there's something greater, there's something higher, there's something deeper, there's something more potent, more powerful than shifting from here to here. And that's shifting here to here. Transformational. Go within, and as we turn within, that which we see around us, as we come in more into alignment with who we are, that which is around us shifts and changes as well. And when we're living in alignment, suddenly those things that we need are present. Those things that we wanted are present. The life that we want to live, what we want to experience, is present. And not because we shifted the deck chair from this side of the ship to that side of the ship, but because we went within. And so it is. So I invite our practitioners and our core council members to please stand and surround the sanctuary as we come together in consciousness. So I invite you to be poor in spirit. Poor in spirit in the way of allowing yourself to empty of self, allowing spirit to live in, through, and as you. As one of our beloved says, get your bloated nothingness out of the way. All right. So we turn within. And I recognize that there is only one power, one presence, one life, one love. This one I choose to call God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and that which God did not create was never ever created. So I know that all of creation, all of life is a divine manifestation and impartation and an expression of this one life. That truly all of it is the divine made manifest, seen and unseen. The entire body of the entire universe is the body of the divine. And so I rejoice in it, and I celebrate it, and I love it. I live in it, and it in me. That the who of who I am is the divine made manifest. That the presence of love, the presence of light is the truth of my nature. The presence of abundance is the truth of who I am. I live in an abundant universe because I myself am an abundant person. I myself am abundant because God is abundant. The universe is abundant itself. There is nothing withheld from me. There is nothing withheld from my life, and therefore there is nothing withheld from anyone. Because as I know that what is true of me, what is the highest truth of me, has to be the highest truth of all. And so I am one with all of creation. I am one with all of life. I am one with everyone present here, and I am one with the one. And so I speak my word here and now for this beloved community, that each one of us has the willingness and the desire to go deeper, the willingness and the desire to experience more of life. And I affirm that we have the realization that the way to do this, the path through which we walk, is one of transformation, is one of coming into alignment with our highest self, the self with a capital S. And so I simply let go of any ideas of lack or limitation. I let go of anything that, any false belief that stood in my way. Any idea of otherness, any idea of less than, any idea of not worthy. These ideas have no power. They have no sway. There is no law to maintain and sustain them. Just as when we shine light into the darkness dissipates. When we shine light and we shine truth into falsehood, it simply falls away. And so I recognize our oneness, I recognize our wholeness, I recognize the truth of our beingness. And I call it good and very good. And I know that we turn within and we simply live from this allowing. We live from the space of opening out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape. And how good it is to know this. I'm so grateful for this beloved community. I'm so grateful for the abundance that is here. I'm so grateful for the abundance of our lives. I'm so grateful for the willingness of each one. I'm so grateful for the love expressing as each one. I'm so grateful for the abundance expressing as each one. Because it is the truth of our very nature. It is the truth of our very being. I simply give thanks for the overflow. I give thanks for the opulence. I give thanks for the joy and the passion and the love. And I release this word into the law, knowing that it is done, knowing that it is so. And I simply let it be, and so it is.